Let's see. Does anybody want to make an approval or a motion to change tonight's agenda?
Look,
I move to move the new business section of the future approvals to the head of the superintendent section of this tonight's agenda and move to approve the amended agenda.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Good, thank you. And can we have a motion to approve the minutes from August 19th?
Motion to approve the minutes from August 19th.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Or are we gonna do the minutes afterwards for the video? Okay. Start.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know what you were asking me. Yes.
Yes.
She is a sick child, so she will
Oh,
be doing
okay.
it from.
No worries. All right.
Yes.
We'll wave and say hello. Hope everybody's feeling better. School committee chairperson comments. I don't have any tonight to give. Pass through that. Next up, we've got community comments. Everybody here's with school. Sam, anybody jumping up and down online?
I see one hand raised.
All right. We can go ahead and bring our first online comment with our new system.
Hello, can you hear me?
We've got you.
Hi, my name is Allison Freeman. I'm a parent of 2 kids in the district. I came before you guys at the end of the 2022 to 2023 school year, talking about the privacy violations that happened, and asking you guys to do something about it. And since then, last year, we had 2 more privacy violations, which I know that you guys are aware of. And so far, nothing has been done. I met with multiple people. I've asked multiple times, and nothing has been done about it. I feel like it's really unacceptable, and it's really difficult as a parent to continue sending your children to school in an environment where their safety is not a priority. And I just want to be clear, this is absolutely a safety issue. I'm really looking for responsiveness at this point from the school committee with changes to your policies on, safe use of photos and safe use of the internet. I think especially in a district that prides themselves on technology usage, you need to be expecting that of everyone in the district, not just the students, which is what your current policy reflects. And the administration needs to make sure those policies are being followed, and they also need to follow them themselves. At this point, I feel like, I've met with people, I've talked with people, I've tried to be understanding, and something really needs to be done. You shouldn't wait until something bad happens to a child to take action. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Sam, any other comments?
Let's see. No hands raised.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to student comments.
All right, so welcome back to us, I guess. So, so school year starting, that means a bunch of activities are coming back up. We're gonna have our club fair to advertise new clubs, and we're gonna start with the fall open houses for the schools. And yeah, it's gonna be a great start for the school year.
Yeah, so I want to mention that National English Honor Society actually has a new club, podcast club, which is coming. It's actually run by like one of my best friends, so be attending because I love podcasts.
All right.
Also today was the Legend of Sleepy Hollow auditions for the field. I'm doing stage crew for this play in particular, so I didn't attend today, but I heard that they went well for my friends and that like people draw. Lastly, at least I've been talking a lot with my Spanish teacher because the Spanish exchange program is starting really soon. We're really excited about that. So me and my friends have gotten in contact with our exchange partners, and we just got the itinerary today for what like field trips and what's gonna happen. And we're excited to like have all these activities for them. And me and my family are also taking trips for our students too. I've had actually like 3 students, but there were some issues because they were allergic to cats twice. So I ended up with that girl named Maria. I'm very excited.
Excellent. Good. Good luck and hope to hear all about the podcast and the Spanish exchange program. All right. Well, with that, we can move on to new business. I think first up, we've got Nature's Classroom trip request.
Thanks for taking the time. So I'm Lauren LaJoy. If you don't know me, I teach 5th grade math and science at MISCO, but I'm also the Nature's Classroom coordinator. And we are getting going with our 3rd year. This will be our 3rd year going to Ivoryton, Connecticut. And the reason why we picked an out-of-state location is due to the fact that they can fit the entire 5th grade. Where when we went to the Charlton location, we had to do half the 5th grade from Monday to Wednesday, and then the other half came Wednesday, Friday. So we really do enjoy that location, and we're asking for the approval of school committee since it's out of state. And if you have any questions for me, I know the price went up slightly, as with unfortunately everything. So it is $390 per student. Our PTO in the past has been excellent about helping us out with scholarships, because we do want as many students as possible to be able to attend that want to. And Nature's Classroom is really good about also, they do not charge at all for a one-to-one chaperone. They recommend between, I think it's like a 1 to 15 ratio. And in the past, we've kind of gone closer to probably a 1 to 12-ish ratio, trying to get at least 2 adults in each hallway, but we can also swing it where it's 2 adults and 1, so 1 can slide. Just so 1 adult is never alone with a group of students. Right now, we don't know the numbers. We're trying to get them up where they have been in the last 2 years. We're not sure, if it's a money thing. We are going to send out a Google form to get feedback from families about if you haven't signed your child up, why that might be. And that will help us provide what's needed. Maybe it's additional information because a lot of information goes out in the summer, which sometimes is difficult to keep up with. I'm a parent myself. It's a lot to handle. You're getting a lot of newsletters. So we just want to make sure parents and families are comfortable with sending their children and getting all the questions that they need answered.
What percentage of students are signed up right now?
Well, I would say maybe 20%, which is significantly lower than it ever has been. So typically we have closer to 60-ish.
60%.
60%.
Attend or signed up by now?
60% usually signed up by now.
Okay.
So I'm not in the communities, but I've asked some of the teachers that are to hear, like sometimes you can hear a pulse out there, like that there's hesitation for some reason or not. I don't know. We haven't heard anything. And even most of the emails that I've shared with Dr. Benoit and Dr. Cohen, it's little questions that we typically get. I'm a picky eater, nothing like a big issue that I couldn't handle answering that I haven't received before. So. Any other?
A couple more, but we'll give others a chance. With the chaperones from the school, are your chaperones exclusively 5th grade teachers and the nurse, or do you have chaperones from other grades attending?
So because we try to have male staff for the boys bunks and females for the girl bunks, We tend to have to reach out to other grades and other staff in the district. A few years ago, we did have parents and families attend. Sometimes it's due to really they have a medical background and they're very beneficial to us.
Yep.
We usually seek out males because we have an all-female fifth grade staff at the moment.
Okay.
So that's usually what we are looking for. Usually we give priority to people who teach fifth grade because in essence, the trip is all about us really getting to know the kids in a different environment. They're coming together Mendon-Upton for the first time. And really we do see great interactions with the kids. You know, it doesn't matter what sport they play or what social little group they're in. It's so different when you get off campus. And it's also, we see another side of the students and they see another side of us. We're kind of overcoming various challenges and new experiences together. So it's something we could carry through actually throughout the whole year. We do spill some things into our cafeterias that we do in the dining halls at Nature's Classroom and things like that.
I just feel like, I mean, I'll make two comments that I think it's an awesome program. Glad you guys did it. I did it 100 years ago from Misco. It was great. I'm glad you guys are doing the full week. That whole split thing was kind of weird. And I think that's cool. I think my only ask is I'd love to get an update on how many non-fifth grade teachers are going. I think one of the questions I'm going to ask to all field trips this year is we focus so much on time to learning and our teachers are gone for conferences and sick days that, you know, if you pull 4 sixth grade teachers and now the entire sixth grade basically has a week of subs, it defeats a lot of the purpose of why we're here. So I'd love to see you guys emphasize the fifth grade teachers and then try to get male teachers that are maybe I don't know, I don't want to speak about the school, but specialties or maybe Jay or somebody who's not taking the away from you. Away from
I tried that before.
Yeah. And then I'll throw one last comment out there. I know where this will go, but you know, if you see any of your 8th grade peers and they want to try to take the 8th graders who never went to the spring before they finish up 8th grade, I know that class would still love the opportunity to go to Nature's Classroom, maybe not as they start middle school, but maybe as they end it. So I'll throw that out there as a tidbit if somebody would be willing to look at that.
Okay.
Any other questions? Cool. Okay, I guess we need to do a vote to approve the trip to Nature's Classroom.
Motion to approve the Nature's Classroom out of state field trip.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you, yeah, and feel free to email me if there are other things that come up.
Okay.
All right, appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have got unified basketball field trip request. Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening. So Unified Basketball is starting up this week. For those of you not familiar with Unified Basketball, it is our basketball program during our fall season, which is the sort of marriage, if you will, of athletes without disabilities with athletes with disabilities. It's a program we started about 4 or 5 years ago. Sounds about right. It's grown every year. It's become an incredibly popular sport throughout the state. We are, you know, our kids have about eight to 10 games now that they participate in, which is incredibly exciting. It's a fantastic sport to come watch if you've never seen it before. They typically play about 1 game a week starting beginning of October. And it's a great experience for not only our students with disabilities, but our students we might describe as able-bodied. It's been a wonderful program. But this year, an opportunity came up for our team to attend the Connecticut Sun basketball game. It's actually next Tuesday. So they're having a unified basketball night as part of sort of the festivities that evening. Our kids will actually be able to sort of get in line, the handshake line for the 2 professional teams. Off the top of my head, I can't remember who the visiting team is, but So Connecticut Sun do play in Connecticut. It's not just a fancy name. They play at the arena at Mohegan Sun. So about 45 minutes. It would be a trip there and back, same day. Similar to, I know Dave Antonelli has taken kids to the Boston Celtics. So doing something very similar. We would be working to provide transportation either through the use of the district van and as well as the coaches and potentially myself. And the cost to students would be $20 for the ticket, and then obviously any spending money that evening. That's pretty much it.
It's all outside of school hours?
Yes, yeah, I think it's a 7 o'clock game, so we would leave, 4 o'clock or so and get back
Sounds
that
fun.
evening.
Any questions? All right. Motion to approve?
To approve the trip to see Connecticut Sun game on Unified Basketball Day.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, on to Dr. Cohen for Superintendent Administrator reports.
Right. I'm going to start just with a quick update. It's something I'd like to highlight at the beginning of the school year when I have the opening day session with all of the faculty and staff. One thing that I brought in a couple of years ago was recognition of years of service. Sam, would you be able to pull up that presentation from
Yes.
the notes? Click on where it says presentation underneath. So what I thought, I'm not going to read off all of the names, but what I thought it would be nice is for you to have an opportunity to see all of the staff, faculty and staff that have been here. No. You want me to try to present, or? It's in the background notes underneath my opening district update. All right, so we went with a superhero theme. I won't be presenting my entire opening day presentation with you, although I did share it with you. But if you can hit present and go to the next. Thank you. Oh, you got to this. There you go. All right. So we start off, and what we do every year, I have the ambassadors for Mendon-Upton. They got a sash last year that said MERC ambassador with the superhero. We got them a superhero cape that has Mendon-Upton on the back. And then there are helpers for the session. So that's Brenda Webster and Bill McGinnis are over 30 plus years. So anyone in that category ends up being an ambassador. You can go to the next round. We have a huge list here of 10 years in Mendon-Upton, and we also, it's every single staff member that we have. So it's cafeteria, custodian, paras, before and after school, administrators, etc. Yeah. So go to the next one. We have 15 years, and one thing we do when we recognize them is we give them some of the Mendon-Upton gear. Right, so as part of our branding, we've been doing the last number of years. So you can receive the blanket as one of the years. We have the canvas bag that I always bring my school committee materials one of the years. And when you get to the later years, you get to choose one of the items from the list. So you may see people with like the jacket for the couple of that.
I was gonna say, don't give Jay any clothes.
Yeah. And
Trip to nature's class.
it's pretty amazing. Yeah, if you go to 20 years in Mendon-Upton, this is the most that we've ever had in one of the groups, which is why I'm not reading off all of the names here. But it was pretty exciting to see the number of staff and faculty. I know we've had more new staff coming on board post-COVID and different people have retired, et cetera, but a lot of staff have also stayed and thrived and are leaders in our district, and that's what's an element that's really nice to recognize them on this opening day. And then you can go to 25, we have that. 25 years in Mendon-Upton. So I just wanted to be able to share that with you. I know I shared the whole list with you, but we continuously try to look for ways to celebrate our students, of course, but also our staff, and know that everyone as part of our values are valued and celebrated and appreciated in the district. This is just one of the ways that we do that. Thank you for showing that.
Just if I could, I'm equally shocked by the number of people on the 10-year list that felt were here for a lot longer than 10 years. And the number of people, that's an incredible amount of dedicated people to us on the 20-25 years.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Obviously 30
Yeah.
years, but that's so cool.
Good stuff. So thank you. I just wanted to quickly give a
Thank
little highlight on that. I'd also like to move on to finally in the flesh, in person, introduce Ryan Roberdeau to all of you. So come on up. He's our new Director of Learning and Innovation, and unfortunately was sick the last time, and I didn't make him, come in. That would have been good. But I'm going to introduce you to him, and then we'll have an opportunity to say a few words if he wants. But we're thrilled to have him on board as the Director of Learning Innovation. He comes to us from many previous roles as a digital learning specialist in the Norton Public Schools, which is where he was just prior to here. But I'm really learning the benefit of his computer science educator background for over a decade. He's taught in comprehensive vocational and university classroom settings, so he's often bringing sort of different varied experiences to us already. He's worked for the University of Minnesota Twin Cities as a coach for CS Coaching for Equity project. Did I get that right? Okay. Additionally, he was a member of the CSTA curriculum alignment team and UMass Dartmouth computer science adjunct faculty. He's been awarded the National Infosys CSTA Teaching Excellence Award and the MassQ Pathfinder Award just recently in 2023. And I would say just in a short time in the district, and I could have kept going with this list, but he's provided PD and AI in education that people were tapping me on the shoulder saying, this is even better than last year. This is way better. This is awesome. Can you bring it back? That was on the opening day. He refined, saw stuff in our clever app management and had some great ideas on how to, reconfigure some aspects of that. Just met with the Blackstone Valley Workforce Hub just last week. Supported our district. One of the tasks we're doing in our strategic plan is about getting to know our students and also their names, having them pronounce it. It's in our strategic plan. So working with what's in a name, opening activities, and supporting the schools. I plans working on planning UDL for EdTech PD for our next PD day, trained our new teachers, launched cybersecurity measures. I'm going to stop there. And is my go-to for many a question, but we're really thrilled to have him. He's hitting the ground running, as I would say. I'll turn it over to you. If you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think I'm equally glad to be here. I've only been here for, I think, July. It's been a lot. It's definitely different, and I'm really enjoying. Team's amazing. It's great to walk around and see the kids and what they're doing. I think Maureen said it really well when you said that I have a diverse background. I've done a lot of different things. I've taught computer science. I was a math ed researcher. I've been a digital tech coach, and this wasn't in the cards for me 6 months ago. I didn't even think about this. So, seeing when this job came out, it really marries a lot of the things that I've done before, and I feel like I've been successful. So I'm just really excited to be here. It's really good. It's been good I'm excited to support the programs that we have that are authentic learning situations, which has been my big mission with teaching. I want to make everything as real as possible. If we can get kids successful in here doing the things that they're going to see outside these walls, they're going to be much more prepared.
Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
I saw your email about the phishing emails. That was very good.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't gone rogue yet, but
Maybe one day.
yeah, maybe one day.
So is there any interest in an all expense paid trip to Connecticut for Nature's Classroom?
With Jay?
Mohegan Sun, is that what?
Seriously, thank you, welcome, and look forward to meeting with you throughout the year.
Awesome, thank you all so much.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, take care.
We'll be bringing them up sometime soon to be back to give some updates from the department, all the work they've already started.
Great.
Now I'm gonna jump into the district action plans. And I shared with you the document of the draft that is a similar format to what we had last year. We tried to simplify it. I don't know if we really did, but we did a little bit in order to not have as much information in it, but still enough that we need. And I'm just gonna give a brief presentation on some of the highlights from it. I know there's a lot in it. If after the presentation or, within this week, if there's something that you have a specific question on, reading through the priorities and action steps, or something doesn't make sense that's in there, please reach out. We hope, I'm gonna share all of that out with the faculty next Monday in the memo, because a lot of our strategic plans drive school improvement plans, drive our professional goals, student learning goals that our teachers are working on. At our opening day, I gave like a slide with some of the core areas that we're working on. I shared this presentation with them in the memo this morning and said that we would be bringing the draft tonight in order to present that. As a reminder, we have our 4 categories, and that's how I've organized the presentation. We have 4 priorities. I didn't cut and paste from our 5-year strategic plan the full priorities that are in there. You've had access to that the last year or so. We're in our 2nd year of our 5-year strategic action, our strategic plan, and you'll see and notice that there's a lot of similar language or building off of what we started last year. And in some cases, we've pivoted into some other areas that we know and had highlighted that were areas that we need to work on, like cybersecurity, for example. That's one that we didn't focus on as much last year, and we're spending a lot of time working on to start out this year. And you'll also know in the background notes that I gave you that we have a series of the priorities underneath the big priorities and kind of sub priorities. And when we laid it out, for the most part, we put them in order, but we don't have to go in order. We're trying to choose no more than 3 or 4 in one of the categories. I have 4, no more than 3 or so that we're really focusing in on. Just because there isn't a priority listed, though, doesn't mean that we're not working on some of those things. So if we say we're talking about, data inquiry, and we didn't mention this something about curriculum, doesn't mean we're not working on curriculum all year. It just means that some of our targeted work are in specific areas. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. If you want, we can go to the next slide. I've really enjoyed starting with theory of action from our plan. So in my presentations with staff, I always bring this, that how do we link our, what is the strategic plan? What's the purpose? Linking our vision to our actions. And if we're able to create this school culture where we value, support, empower each learner, we'll provide engaging, meaningful, authentic learning experiences, which you always hopefully hear a lot about, that we try to highlight here at the meetings, then we'll unleash the potential of each of our learners and prepare them for anything. And that's what we're hoping for. We often come back to this theory of action in our strategic work. I've highlighted the 4 areas, and what I'm going to do is begin with deeper learning and give you our goal, and then some highlights related to each of the sub-priorities. Our deeper learning goal, you'll be hearing a lot about what we're referring to as our Mendon-Upton framework for deeper learning. in the past couple of years, you've heard us talk about authentic learning and the level of protocol for that project, Lead the Way, Applied Learning Institute. All of those have been building the foundational work of what we mean by deeper learning. And we're bringing all of them together and we're going to create our own Mendon-Upton deeper learning framework that then is going to drive our conversations and our work and our look-fors in classroom walkthroughs, our instructional moves that you'll see from teachers, and how we look at curricular resources. And so that's we're going to be beginning with that. You'll hear a lot about that this year. Flexible scheduling, curricular resources, partnerships, and of course, the portrait of a learner. And we're hoping to take a next step with reflections for our students as well. So if you go to the next slide, thank you. We have the 3 areas under deeper learning. There was a lot more, just so you know, in priorities. I just tried to pull out key points for you. I just mentioned the deeper learning framework that we'll be beginning with developing. Another thing we're working on is redesigning some of our spaces to support deeper learning. You've already heard a little bit about this last year. Media center at the middle school, a lot of work. It took the whole year. We're in pretty good shape with some more things to do, but it's going to be a more usable space. We have our Inspired Innovation Center at MISCO. We had a big grant, brought it in. It's not being used to the capacity that it can be used. It's on Ryan's list. We're on it, and we're going to be working together to see different ways we can redesign the space and engage people in it. And we've also put in a capital skills grant for the high school to also work on spaces here at the high school. Whether or not we get that grant, I don't know. If not, we'll look at other funding opportunities. We have some key deeper learning curricular materials when we're looking for any curriculum materials that we're piloting or bringing in or doing a review cycle on. We're going to be focusing on the deeper learning criteria when we're viewing the curriculum that we're using. So one great example is investigating history. You hear me talk about it all year because it's so good. But with that program and those resources, it's just really getting students engaged right away in deep learning about civics and about history. And granted, that was what I used to teach, so I'm pretty excited about that. And that's endorsed by our Applied Learning Institute as well, that I was able to attend this summer. Flexible scheduling. We started our scheduling committees at all of the buildings last year, and we knew it would be a 2-year process. Each school's working at different paces and have different priorities. Some of the work we want to do is to bring alignment between the middle school and high school in particular for some of the priorities and see if there's ways to share resources to expand the programs that we have, because we're a little constrained by the way, sometimes all of you ask, why can't we do that? Why can't we have these courses? Because we have constraints in our schedule. And if we can figure out solutions to those constraints, then the goal is to be able to open up new opportunities. And that's what our communities are working on. We hope to then bring it across grade levels in order to evaluate, are we meeting the needs? And it does take a lot of technical work, but also adaptive work with having the members and teachers and staff, because everyone's impacted when you have schedule changes. And then finally, for this category, the Portrait of a Learner reflections. There's nothing really new here. It's just building on what we've started. We have the Portrait of a Learner competencies that we've been, I would say most people know what they are now. That was our initial push the last couple of years. And now we're working on alignment between all of the grades to make sure if we're saying in the earlier grades, global citizenships, ICANN statements look like this, then how are we building on that at the middle school grades, and how are we building on it at the high school and building the skills throughout? We've already started that. We also need a true implementation plan for how we're going to start collecting these reflections and experiences. We've started almost backwards in the sense that, we have mastery learning transcript and the mastery learning record and at the end, but now how do we build it from the beginning? That's the work that needs to be done. We know that one avenue is always going to be through Inspired Learning Days. That's one area that we connect to Portrait of a Learner, and we can have reflections, but how can we have it be more than just on Inspired Learning Days and part of our practice throughout the district? Before I move on to the next priority, any questions on this?
So most of what the flexible scheduling is, you're really just saying, we're going to build we're gonna reflect on our own schedule, and try to build a more improved, flexible schedule. That's the actual outcome.
Yeah, so for example, the high school, there are a couple teachers, staff members that are running the committee, and they had a few more meetings last year, and they came up with 3. It was a lot of, what if we did this? What if we do that? I don't like this. How about this? And everything got put on the table, and they're already working on some 3 draft pilot type of schedules.
So in
And-
order to understand
Yep.
how this could be applied, can you think of an example you might give us if we had the ultimate flexible schedules? Then
Yeah,
what
I
would you
can.
do with it?
I can tell you what I say to them at every meeting that I have the opportunity. So when I was in a previous district as a teacher, and we had a rotate at a high school, but we had a rotating schedule in the morning and a rotating schedule in the afternoon. And the reason why we had the afternoon separate from the morning is because we sent kids out on community service. We sent them out on internships, and some went to jobs. If you have a rotating schedule that goes through all of it, you can't do that. Or we could think about ways that we could have overlap, which is tricky. We're trying to figure out how do you have overlap with different times, start and end times with the high school, and middle school, that, if we have a request for Italian in middle school to build Italian up into the high school, but we don't have an Italian teacher, we wouldn't have enough interest for probably a full Italian teacher at the middle school, probably. But we have an Italian teacher, that means we could work their schedule where they could come down and do some intro to Italian, right? That's been talked about, like, how do we do that? Well, we can't do it when we have different schedules. We've also talked about the need for, you've heard over the years, the WIN block, what I need block for students, and, having that here at the high school, having that we've been working on it at the middle school, we have it at the elementary school. Obviously it looks different at all levels, but making sure, you're able to do that. And then other things come up like, recess and lunch and timing at the middle school. When we, our last round of contracts a couple of times ago, we extended the school day at the middle school, but there isn't passing time the way the agreement came about, which does impact coverage and getting to places. That's more a technical issue, but it actually impacts staff at the middle school. So those are a few things that are, but you'll hear, I'm sure, through school council and other ways at particularly the high school, and then we're hoping for overlap, and we'll see where we land on it. But it's been good conversations at least. Any other questions on this one?
I mean, tons. I've got tons of questions
Yeah.
about the impact that, but
Yeah.
I don't want to bring it up right now.
Yeah, well, like I said, if you have questions after or ideas or thoughts, feel free to, send them my way. Just know that I want to get the final document by next Monday, so we can just kind of move forward and publicize it out. Number 2, we're always going to be focusing on high quality curriculum and instruction. Please know there's a big overlap between deeper learning and high quality curriculum and instruction. We kind of bucketed them a little bit, but there is overlap throughout. But our goal here is to build practices that enable a collaborative approach where teacher leaders use data to inform adjustments to instruction, improve our ability to support and monitor student progress. And you'll hear a lot about some of that work. So if you go to the next slide. 2.1, we're continuing with, I believe. What? Then what's not changed? Those are the bullets for the most slide. Yeah, why is that? Oh, yeah. All right.
Your notes are correct.
Yeah.
Read the notes.
Correct.
And the 2 bullets at the top of 2.6, I think, we could bring for 2 things.
Okay. Yeah. So that is the same, right? Yep. Yeah. Can I delete that? Sorry about that. Stuff. All right, I'm going to focus on it, bucket it together. One thing with our, I'm going to begin, actually, I'll begin in the middle then with our instructional coaches. We have our instructional partners rather, and our focus is to develop the teacher leadership. And Cheryl's done an awesome job of working with our teacher leaders. And what we're going to be doing is focusing in on the deeper learning framework with our teacher leaders, and taking when we develop that framework and the look for us to then work with them to support their colleagues in the classroom, but also with a lot of their practices. Something else you're going to see a focus on is around literacy focused instructional practices. This is building off, and I don't know if they'll talk about it. I mean, if you have the experts in the room, the elementary principals here, but they've done great foundational work with writing and literacy and scope and sequencing, and we're building upon that and actually bringing in outside PD resources in order to do that. And that's going to be a big focus for the elementary level. Something you're going to see is we have our DCAP, and I don't know if you recall that with our DCAP, we revise it I was doing it about every 4 years, and we're in that 4-year realm. And what we do, so for example, one of the iterations we brought in SEL, kind of a little bit more SEL support. And what we're going to be doing now is making it more digital. And we've had people working over the summer and continuing into this year. So then that way it's a little bit, rather than just a document in people's hands, it's something they can get to resources a little bit more quickly in that as well. Some of the data systems are connected to the data inquiry work. The data systems you've heard about that we're continuing, we have the open architects that we're still continuing to advance our dashboards. In particular, we're going to be taking those dashboards and building out in S3 a whole child review data dashboard, where we can build out that process for a whole child review and have access to more data in the systems that we're working in. We're hoping to take our first data inquiry protocol that we've had the last couple of years. It has lots of resources in it, but we've received feedback that we are looking for a more streamlined protocol that we can use in formative assessments and day-to-day. We've kind of started big, which is great because we're working on training everyone, but then how do we refine that practice where we have a data protocol that is in people's hands and they're using all the time. We are also working on various protocols for sharing data across transitions in between schools. We've already made some huge improvements in that area. We'll be continuing with that as well. Let's see if I missed anything else. Did I miss anything else? No.
Yeah, I apologize, hope that I didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
But is there anywhere where like S3, open architects and Power School all come together?
They already do.
Okay.
So the Open Architects is effectively fed through Power School, and S3, well, I don't know if you noticed it, but as we just learned that like our model dashboard that we've been developing, that S3 is actually gonna develop it out and work in partnership with DESE around it. So it's got legs.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
I may have shared that in a memo with you because she shared that. Like, that's amazing. I love when they say we're doing good stuff. Yeah. That's a great question though.
So, but S3 and our open architects are both different organizations, different companies.
In fact, yes, there's one is a partner to help us like really develop systems and structures for understanding the whole child. It doesn't have anything to do with a system.
Yeah.
Open Architects is a company that will help us array the data so that we can use it for that process.
Okay, so S3 is a process.
Yeah, and we're in our 3rd year for S3 in training, and so every year they've applied different skills, and we've been working on these dashboards, and now we're taking these dashboards and trying to integrate it with Open Architects. So with the support of S3 and how to analyze and use it, and hoping to bring some of that data more effectively into some of our child study work and student support teams, and then reviewing the data in a different way. I mean, there's still, some of these changes are like, you say the big change is like 4 to 5 years or whatever. I mean, it takes about that long, but you can see, but hopefully I think you've seen the growth from no data to learning how to analyze the data. Now we're integrating it, and now we're going to hopefully, we have some better practices with it. And we've also identified, and I think it's in the next one, number 3. Sometimes they run together too, because there is overlap with some of the work across priorities, but around SEL data. So that's in the next one. Let's see.
And congratulations on getting accepted. And you guys showed us the demo last year. I think we got to really ask for it. It was awesome. But you can see why pulling all that into one view is very beneficial.
Awesome. Thank you. So our priority 3 is equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We spent a fair amount of time on belonging work last year. What we've identified some areas is to continue around culturally proficient instruction and practices. We still have a heavy focus on developing social emotional learning curriculum. And also we added this year inclusive decision making. So I'll touch upon that. Hopefully I didn't repeat anything. All right, I talked about this. I don't know how we'll share this with you, but this is amazing. I did a activity with the leadership team on what's in a name and like my name, my identity, shared some resources. And we talked about last year is a great suggestion from a teacher in one of our S3 meetings actually about what if there was a way we could have our students record their names for us and maybe even tell us a little bit about their names or something if they choose to, so we can better understand them from day one. And as an example, did you guys do this at the advisory? Yeah, so you can speak to it. I was able to hear a couple of recordings just as examples, but students in advisory went through a lesson at the high school, for example, and did that. And now that would be able to be uploaded into the dashboard. So as a teacher, I'd be able to get to know how to correctly pronounce my students' names and here. Did you want to add anything about that experience, or you don't have to?
I remember like, because as someone who always has her last name pronounced wrong, it's like, even like my parents, they'll be like, by L-E, and I'll be like, okay, Mr. Lee. It's like, this is my, it's like, I feel like it was really obscene, yeah, to have that.
Yes. So I think it'll be, do you want to say something?
I commonly mispronounce last name, sometimes even first name, but sometimes, kind of like the way of thinking of this is I kind of welcome, like when people get it wrong, because A, sometimes it's just that they're trying, and B, kind of, sometimes I wear that difference as like a badge of honor. Like I remember where I came from. That yeah, I might not be from here, but I definitely came from somewhere. Even though it's different, it's still
See what I mean? Like, so all you have to do is ask students, and every student has a story, a different story, and it was incredible. Other focus, we have visual reminders that we're working on in the community to be more inclusive. One example that you might see up, we have a new signs in multiple languages welcoming into Mendon-Upton. We are going to be this year focusing on alternative school activities that are focused more on positive school culture rather than isolated seasonal holidays. We're going to be really intentional around when there are different holidays, instead of focusing on that holiday, focusing on what are other activities we can do and spirited activities in school or learning activities that are engaging, like the cardboard creation day or other things that have that focus to be more inclusive, because in the past, some of our holidays have been, highlighted and celebrated, but it's been leaning towards certain cultures and not inclusive of all as we become more diverse. We introduced last year the Equity Pause Protocol, which is in essence, anytime you're making a decision or working on anything, you go through this protocol and you look through the lens of equity. And we introduced it last year, and we're going to be bringing it into decision-making and some of our work across a lot of our work this year. With regard to the SEL curriculum, our school cultural behavioral expectations, in particular, MISCO's had a team that worked this whole summer on developing a launch of positive behavioral expectations in schools in different areas, and they worked really hard, a team of teachers and administrators as well. You'll hear, I'm sure, more about that. We have that at various schools looking in different ways, but we've had some positive work. We're going to form a district SEL team that is going to review SEL lessons, look at scope and sequence. We've started the process. We have SEL curriculum and lessons all over, but what we haven't done is done the written mapping of what is where, and that's the work that we want to be doing. We've identified that some of our screeners, or perhaps like panorama survey, it's not fully meeting all of our needs for some of the SEL surveys. We're going to look at some other ones, and there are also other screeners that our teams, we have a smaller team looking at some potential screeners as well.
And then finally, feedback. This is a new one. We are going to be rolling out a few of surveys this year. We're coming back to this climate survey. Climate survey is something we want to do like every couple of years. A little overkill to do like every single year, but to kind of rotate every couple of years, as well as our EDI survey, which is through Panorama. We did that a couple of years ago. And also increasing student staff feedback. We have intentional ways that we can do that. Let's say I'm hosting an open house, or I'm hosting a literacy night. I have a way that you can provide feedback at that event. And I know principals have already started that, but we want to do that in a more systemic way. And then increasing opportunities for families to engage, provide feedback in different ways. We already do it, but we're trying to be intentional about how we expand it. Any questions on number 3?
No additional?
Right. Number 4, we call it community support, but it's often everything else as well. And it's a lot of the district work that takes place too. But we're continuing with communications, looking at cybersecurity, and we added in human resource practices. If you go to the next slide, and this will be the last of it. 4.1 communications. We have one thing we haven't done is, I've been building the website out to have different resources on it. Next up, we identified curriculum instructional resources on the website to be clear about standards and expectations, what we offer and provide. We have some info, but we haven't worked on it a little bit. That's our next thing on our list. And also maybe there are ways that our teachers and departments can also share with families what we're focusing on. And look, student-led conferences are going to be piloted at the elementary level this year. I know my own children went through student-led conferences when they were in 3rd grade. It was the most amazing experience ever for me as a parent. I'm really excited about this. And one thing that came up recently was some of our district forums, even though we use interpreters, we use translators, some of our main forms that we have are not just easily accessible on our website and translatable. They're PDFs. That's something we're going to make sure we get up there for registrations, choice. The forms we've been working on, now we're doing that. Finance facility, you'll be hearing about some 5-year financial projections. We hired an outside consultant, which I mentioned before, who's working on that right now. We continue our capital planning collaboration, particularly in fields, and we're waiting on MSBA to hear at the end of October if our SOI was approved for this year. And we have a couple new ideas on how to communicate differently about the budget. We'll be seeking feedback from the budget subcommittee on new ways that you'd like to be receiving information. Safety, always on our mind. We are focusing on cybersecurity awareness PD and developing an incident response plan. I talked about multi-factor authentication. And also under safety is, we've been doing the last couple of years to review we're on B, I think. I don't know if we made it to C in our policies, but I'd like us to not pause in that review, but go through some of our other areas and review for state and federal compliance. And so we had one, pair earlier, questions about student privacy. That's one of the things that's under our review is the FERPA. So we have mandated trainings that we go through every year with our staff. We're going to begin with those. So 504 and restraint, and we're going to make sure that all of our mandated regulations that we're following, our policies are matching. That's where we're going to begin. And then we'll identify other ones to make sure that we remain in compliance with our policy language. Finally, human resources. We're going to be focusing on improving our substitute process and training. We're going to look to engage with colleges and universities to see if we can engage in a pipeline for student teachers. If you can partner with a university, bring in student teachers, they often become teachers in your buildings or staff in your buildings. And while we've had student teachers, we haven't had here's our partnership, or it's been sporadic. Especially post-COVID. We had some before, and we're hoping to bring that back. And we're also going to be looking at our materials for recruitment
And we already have a recruitment, protocol, but in hiring protocol, and we have equity and diversity training and bias training within that. But what we want to do is look at all of our recruiting and marketing materials and the information that we're sending out as well. And we're going to do an audit of them. A lot for me. It's hard to sum up all of the district plans, but do you have any questions on any of them?
Let's make a comment more than a question on communications. I think one of the things I'd love to see the district just continue, especially at the middle school level, and one of the things is just timeliness of Power School. I think Power School is such a phenomenal tool when it's used correctly and teachers are entering homework completion, grades, and that kind of stuff. I gotta believe it takes off a lot of stress sometimes at the parent level and can make parent-teacher communication easier. At times it can slip, and we've seen it slip, up to an entire quarter. And I don't know if that exactly falls into communication, but I think it is kind of part of classroom communication. I'd even maybe challenge the district to say, is there a way that, somebody, Liz Black can create a report to the principal, say, listen, this teacher hasn't updated in 10 days. It's at least a conversation right, at that point. Say, hey, I noticed you're doing attendance.
You can create that report.
Yeah, I think that would be a great report to have distributed at the principal level. It's just so we're following up. I think when you get in high school, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, it starts to become more student responsibility.
Mhm.
However, say my wife always did like to look and see, nothing's like, losing a grade because you don't do homework or something like that. But anyways, that's one thing I'd love to see.
Honestly, it starts a conversation with your kid because the way that they actually count for the different grades, there's different percentages and things that you don't understand by looking at this.
Yeah.
So, and then you start to understand how it's going. So
Yeah.
I find it really useful.
I thought there was an initiative to get away from Google Forms and use Power School for doing surveys and getting information from parents and family.
Yeah, we're hoping to have, so let's say a good example is like almost internal, like they used it and tested out the e-forms like in our school for like field trip requests instead of like a Google form, like something that they can submit it in that school. So they tested out last year and did a couple, and could roll out a few there. It won't apply for everything, like the large surveys. We're gonna still use the survey features, but yeah, you're right. In some cases, standard ones, we're looking to bring that into our school.
We're starting to see that at the high school level.
Are
and the parent, the handbook sign off was part of Power School this year.
That was the goal, so I'm happy to hear they did that. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's the yeah, you can check it out.
Alright.
We've done it. I know we're working towards it. That's good to hear. Anything else?
Not for me.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good update.
Right. Great. We have our elementary principals.
Sure.
Page 12.
Hi, thank you for having us. Just a reminder, my name is Liz Garden. I'm the principal at Club, and Wendy from Memorial. And we are here actually representing our report card committee that began meeting last year to propose some updates to our whole progress reporting system at the elementary level. So that was a good segue at the end conversation about communication. So as I said, we started in the spring last year, early spring, to meet with this committee that has combined educators from both schools. And we first started to come together and just really pull research and articles about effective grading practices. Because initially when we formed this group, we were like, we want to look at the report cards, but really like, it's more than just the report cards. It's about reporting and sharing information with parents and with staff about student progress. So we had a lot of conversation in the beginning just about that. And then we worked together to come up with this vision that you see here, where we want, we want to communicate overall growth for our students. And we want to represent the authentic journey of a student through the use of continuous formal and informal tasks and narratives. And, what we found was in our discussion, it's at the elementary level, especially, where it's not so much grading that we're doing. We are really, we're reporting on student growth and progress. And so it was clear that we needed to kind of update how we were sharing that information.
All right, I have the next slide here. So we kind of want to just give you a summary of the work that we've done, leading into a proposal that we'll give you on the final slide. So this work was really initiated. Honestly, it kind of started in our school councils and the discussions that we were having there about the effectiveness of the report card and it being really unclear to a lot of families. And I'll go more into that when I get to the timeline of grading over the years. So feedback from families, both in our surveys and more informally at our school council meeting, really caused us to take a pause and think about how could we make this better and clearer so that the communication and understanding of how a child at the elementary level is progressing could be clearer. So we convened a committee, as Liz said, early last spring. We have grade level representatives from K through 4 and administrators from both buildings. It was a really fun group. We had some really good discussions and some really productive meetings. I was really excited. I left every meeting, even though they were in the afternoons, really excited. We developed a vision focused on keeping the progress report vertically coherent. Right now, if you look at our report cards from grade to grade, there is a little bit of it's very subtle transitions from year to year. It's not super clear. So that was something we really wanted to improve. So when you look at the new revisions, you can see a very clear path from K to 4 and keep them really steeped in the Massachusetts standards. We researched and looked at report cards, progress reports, websites from all over the nation, including several schools that we really found were really good models in Massachusetts. And so we combined some things we liked with some new ideas we had to create these new drafts that we've created. And our hope is to finalize all of the committee work by the beginning of October, which at that point we'll seek feedback from educators to make adjustments. We have to do some educating of families on the changes, which we hope to do in the coming months. And ultimately, some of the best districts that we saw with really clear progress reporting guidelines had really awesome web pages right on their district site with a lot of resources for families, examples of every grade level's progress report. And I would love to see something like that come about here as well, but that's all kind of down the road. Our plan is to use the November conferences, which are typically historically very well attended at the elementary level. We have very few families that we have to kind of chase down to meet with to start that conversation about each individual student's progress towards the end of the year. And then teachers will provide resources to families about grade level expectations at the conference. So it would kind of start in those, and our conferences are pushed back this year to the end of November. So it gives us a little time to get prepared for that.
So, the past several years, we've been moving to a more consistent, ongoing progress monitoring model, and at the elementary school, what that looks like is we use, exit tickets, we have small group instruction, we do individual check-ins with students, and we're continuing to kind of develop that process of informally throughout the whole term, assessing student progress, and then adjusting our instruction. But one of the things we hope to do is that we had a lot of conversation about also embedding, which we've been doing across everything in elementary school, the portrait of a learner competencies. So, we like the I can statements that come out through that. Also having those I can statements for our standards as well, for students to really own that they're learning, and do some goal setting and reflecting on their learning, and that would hopefully come about through our progress monitoring and reporting. We would, as Wendy said, we hope to also utilize much more student work, like having kids look at their own student work, but also having teachers look at student work. And then having kids, we hope to in fourth grade start the idea of student-led conferences this year, which we know will be some work. But the idea of students really being involved in updating their families about their progress and us as educators helping them with that process. And, you know, then, so we would have the conferences in November, and then we would formally, you know, report out to families in January and then again in June.
So I thought I'd kind of take you on a walk through the years of grading. We can probably all remember getting our report cards in elementary school, and it had typically an A, B, C, D, or F. That's what I'm kind of dubbing as traditional grading. The challenge with traditional grading is there was really inconsistent curriculum and content being taught from classroom to classroom, school to school, state to state, and then typically grades were very subjective based on how you performed compared to everybody else in your classroom. And that kind of all shifted when states and the nation kind of went to developing curriculum standards all around, and we shifted to standards-based grading, which is that middle one. A lot of really good things came about from standards-based grading. The challenge that we have with it was that educating of both the educators and the parents on the differences between the two. And at times there's a lot of comparison of a 4 being like an A or a 3 being like a B. And really that wasn't the intent of standards-based grading. The report cards were long because we were trying to cover every standard that we possibly could in a grade level. And then as the years went on, teachers were benchmarking the standards out through the year. So a student could potentially get a 3, which would be meeting the standard in the first report card in December. And then at the end of the year, they might get a 2. Well, that's confusing. How can they be meeting the standard and then not be? And that's because of the way it was benchmarked. And I made a bullet up here that we used trimesters. And so that's one of the key things we're going to try to ask you to possibly shift. So the next iteration of standards-based grading, we're kind of dubbing 2.0. It looks very similar. It's not a drastic change in what we're doing. It does include SEL indicators. The I can statements are on there. We really stuck with the CASEL competencies along with the portrait of a learner. I really like the way those turned out. We're reporting against end of year expectations right from the start. And so that's one of the reasons we're proposing not to produce the first progress report. I'd rather call it that than a report card until the end of January, because typically most kids are going to be progressing towards the standard in November. So we thought that it made a lot more sense to move to semesters, having a January and a June, and using that conference time in November as our first touch point for families. So those conferences are really key. We have covered stuff from the next slide. I just wanted to show you the draft of the performance indicators that we are proposing. It's a change from the 4-3-2-1 system. And this is probably the biggest change that we're making on the report card. And I think it's a really important, really crucial one that really needs to be made. That top scale, instead of a 4, it's an M, and it's basically meeting the standard consistently and independently. It's just so much clearer how you attain that. You have to be independent, and you have to be consistent, and you have to be meeting that end of year standard. And that is just so much clearer than putting a 4 on a report card. This will also give us the opportunity to kind of asterisk if we haven't assessed yet, because it's a new standard that we just introduced, or if it's something we haven't introduced yet, which will be very few standards by January, if we're being honest, we may be able to gray it out. I will say I've been working with Liz Black throughout the summer and in the springtime, kind of showing her the updates, like, is this possible on PowerSchool? Can we do this? And she's saying, yes, it can be done, but we're going to have to help her because it's going to be a lot of work to change some things. So
So, I'll summarize sort of what we're proposing, but we wanted to include in here, and you just heard from Maureen talking about the strategic plan. I mean, there are several parts of the strategic plan that we could have pulled out that go along with this, but the two that really stuck out to us the most were under high quality curriculum instruction, that we have said we're going to shift our practices in grading and feedback to better reflect learning and growth, promote equity, and to foster performance-based and competency-based learning. That is, in a nutshell, why we, formulated this group and why we've been having these discussions. And then also under, I'm going to forget, is it just communication is the final heading? Community support, thank you. We have under there also improved communication at the classroom, building, and district level to increase engagement of stakeholders. And we feel like this is, a big piece of this is the conversation about how we're better engaging with our families and our parents so that they are aware of how their students are progressing throughout the year. So what we are really asking of you is that, we're proposing to shift our schedule, as Wendy said, to go from trimesters before to the semester model where report cards or progress reports would be shared in January and June. We would still absolutely have our fall parent conferences because, as she said, those are, we have all the parents show up for those. And that will continue to play an important role. And, with that added addition of actually starting to try to include students at the 4th grade level. And then, we are updating the template in general with, she just shared the scale there, making some of the standards progressions more clear, and then embedding the SEL progress in the template that wasn't there before. So, questions?
I'm sure there's lots.
That was a lot crammed in.
And we have not shared the drafts of the report cards with you yet. If you'd like to see them, we're happy to share them.
In the current or old model,
Say it
in the
lower.
current or old model, you
Yes.
have the trimesters. Did the first trimester end before or after the kind of,
Conferences?
yeah?
It's kind of like all
It
around the
was
same
all
time.
around the same time, which was, it feels very redundant. So the teachers will meet with the parents and
Then literally like, I think a week later, progress reports were going out, so.
it was several weeks later, but it was very close together.
So I can see that there's at least a benefit of that of, starting to put together the first progress reports kind of gives the teachers some focus on what to discuss in the parent-teacher conferences. Are you concerned about there being kind of a lack of firm or concrete progress to report in those conferences with?
So a big piece of this, when we started to meet with the committee last year was that I think people realized, oh my goodness, there's like 3 layers of this. There's the actual template that we're looking at adjusting and, making changes to and improvements on. There's the educating families and parents, and then there's the educating and discussing grading practices with our teachers and how they are tracking progress. So that's a lot of work that we're going to be doing with them all year, actually. So I'm actually not worried that they won't know kind of what to share or,
It's a good question. And it's something that, I definitely was like wondering about when we first started talking about moving to semesters. I know that can be a little scary. Like I won't get like a written report as frequently about my child, but I think as Liz was saying, we still have 2 more committee meetings, and the job in those last 2 committee meetings is to solidify the resources that we're going to provide for parents and help. They're actually going to help us to design our parent presentations and our staff presentations. And my hope would be that when we train our staff for how to share information in November, that it will feel very much like a progress report. It just won't be written, but there will be data, there will be student work samples, there will be opportunities for talking about how, like, what should it look like at the end of the year? And here's kind of where your child is right now. So I can understand your question.
How are you going to embed the social emotional learning progress in there? Seems like that's a really complicated one.
So we're actually gonna use the same scale for both. If you can just give me a second so I can go back and reread what some of them are, it might make it clearer for you.
But they be based off the CASEL competencies.
They are, so I'm just gonna pull up the grade 2 because that's kind of middle of the road. So we've broken them down, we're calling them behavior supporting behavior supporting school success. And we have them broken down by each grade into self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And then each grade has between 2 and 3 descriptors under that. So for instance, in 2nd grade under self-awareness, it identifies and communicates feelings and needs, and then accepts responsibility for behavior. And then if you look at the grade 3, it bumps it up a level. It's still the same focus, but it's like what the next level would be. And we pull these right from like CASEL descriptors to kind of help it build each year. Like there's a layer of self-awareness that grows from year to year, and we want to be able to assess that and track it.
And so then it would be just like this, as she had said, are they are they progressing towards that? Are they meeting those expectations? And those are going to be definitely teacher conversations. Teams are going to be talking about, to think about how best to record that.
So there's really 2 proposals together here, right? So there's, I'm understanding, hopefully I didn't miss it, moving away from the 1, 2, 3, 4 to the to those metrics there, right? Because today isn't 4 exceeds or something like that. Yeah, right. So I totally get that you're there, you're doing well or you're not. If, the last thing is, why is my kid not a 4? Well, they're meeting expectations of a 3rd grader. Don't worry. So in my opinion, anyways, for everybody, that makes sense. I think that twice a year versus 3 times a year, I don't know. I kind of take a lot of opinion from educators, from you guys, as to what the right thing to do is there. Someone asked a really good question about when does the first report card come out versus conferences, right? It almost feels like the first report card should come out 2 weeks before conferences, or at least a progress report. Right? Now you have something that you've looked at, you review, when you walk into that parent-teacher conference, you have something to talk about, versus just the conversation starting and not necessarily knowing if you've really identified your child's gaps or not. Does that make sense?
I think it's maybe from our perspective a little bit different than the elementary level, like where we feel like our teachers are more engaged with the families right from the get-go, because they're with the kids all day long. They have one class in front of them, and conversations are started earlier. So by the time conferences come around, that's not typically the first time that you're speaking with a family. Whereas I think when you're in a middle or a high school situation where you have 6 different teachers and you're not with the teacher all day, it might be the only time. I know for my own children, if I go to conferences at the high school level, it's like, oh, nice to meet you. Sure. But I think it's a little bit different at the elementary level in that I feel like there's more touch points about informal. Obviously, the conference day is like the formal touch point, right? But my expectation would be that our teachers are having ongoing conversations with families. But hear you.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no background in this, right? This makes sense. The whole MP, whatever. My eyes aren't that good. I just, I gotta believe at times there's parents that they get the first report card and they say, oh wow, I'm going to hire my kid a private tutor because they really need help in speech or they need help in reading comprehensive.
Well, the goal would be that that's not what's happening. that if that's the first time that you're getting news that your child is not that, then that's actually should be a conversation with one of us as well, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is an extension of what we've been talking about in terms of the progress the whole district has made in terms of data collection and the open architects. And there's data available to teachers, parents whenever it's needed. So getting sort of a formal report card piece twice a year doesn't bother me as much because I know that there's data-rich sources that are available. Like if I'm having concerns about my kid, I can pick up the phone and call the teacher, and I'm sure they can pull up that open text snapshot and tell me exactly where and how that might be helpful. But I'm hoping and I'm assuming that part of the parent education piece of this is when I'm looking at this report card, how am I supposed to know that at this point in the year, P is no longer appropriate? Now this is a student who's in need of.
You stole my.
You talk a lot, it's my chance. How is that supposed to, how am I supposed to get the communication from that my student needs some additional support, or maybe my kid has reached mastery sooner than other kids, and this is now a student who needs some extension. Like that's the piece, you know, for those of us who still have that ABC structure stuck in our brains.
Yeah.
How does
So like behind the scenes, in the buildings, we are constantly looking at student data to the point where I don't feel like there's ever a kid that pops up that I, even as a building principal, that I would be like, oh, I didn't know that child was struggling. And perhaps we might need to beef up the amount that we're communicating with parents on that as well, because we certainly know, and we, I think, assume that our teachers are definitely sharing that information with families. Certainly when children come into child study, which we can initiate anytime we see a student who is still getting that P and we're like, they should be meeting by now. When a child study is initiated, the teachers always reach out to the families to let them know that as well.
I think on the other side too, at least I find that a lot of times, like I have to remind myself, obviously I'm a parent myself too. So, you know, like, and I've been in education a long time, but there are parents who, I mean, certainly if their child is in need of support, but I find a lot of parents who don't realize that, like, okay, this is the natural progression of how this child should be progressing. And they don't know that. And so sometimes that's on us too, to also make sure we're helping to educate. I'm constantly saying to our staff at Buff, like, we have to remember that we have to keep educating parents because they just don't know what they don't know. And I mean, that's no fault to anyone because they don't eat, sleep, and breathe this like we do every day. So, you know, but they're like Wendy's right there. I mean, there would be a big problem if a parent came and said, you know, it seems like my child's struggling and this is the first time I'm learning about it, because I don't know how that would, I don't know, be able to happen, I guess, right now.
And I guess because we live and breathe elementary education all day, I think we very much see the report card as like just an event, because we are expecting that there's communication all year long. And we look at grading at the elementary level as not like something you're earning, like I'm gonna earn an A. Like at the high school level and college level, like they have to earn grades more so. At the elementary level, we're tracking their ability to learn how to read, how to write, how to do math, how to solve problems. And so we're tracking the progress versus that. I think there's a transition that happens in middle and high school. And I much would prefer the conversations with families about progress versus worrying about the actual report card.
Right, and these are a lot of the conversations that we had in those first couple of meetings with the committee, because it is a mindset shift to that the report card, you know, it is one form of communication.
Right.
Unfortunately, in our society, it has become sort of, for parents, I mean, it's like, oh, this is we get the report card, like, but it's just one communication tool. And we're trying to improve that tool, but also know that
we're trying to improve our communication
overall. Exactly.
So how do you, so if a kid comes through second grade and gets a couple of P's and he's still got those P's by the end of the grade, how does he transition into third grade? How does the parent transition into third grade?
So that one, you're saying if he has several, like he's still progressing, end of the year, he's still progressing, right?
Transition through the grades too, that you got to think about, especially with the family who thinks that, oh man, do I have an emergency here for my kid? Do I have something? So I'm just trying to understand. I don't necessarily think this is a bad grading system. Don't get me wrong. I think this is probably right on target, but especially if you're talking about MET is such a wide envelope that you can, hopefully you can meet. So P becomes
So
sort of an alarm bell.
I can tell you, I mean, because I've had conversations with some parents of like, I can think of a situation with a child last year where, we didn't have Ps on the report card, but, this was a child that we knew, wasn't meeting all of the standards by the end of the year. But also because we knew that, there were interventions that we were putting in place and always communicating with the parent. And I did a lot of reassuring parent, like, no, that doesn't mean the child's not gonna go on to third grade. It just means we have all this information. This intervention's working for this area, this one isn't, we're gonna try something different. Now next year's teacher knows,
That's really good.
here's all that we've done, and then this is where they're gonna start with that child,
that's really-
so I
that's
mean,
really excellent.
like, those are the conversations we have to have.
Yeah.
Because every child, I mean, I'm a child development, that was my focus, and so, every kid develops differently, so that's another challenge of reporting on children's
standards.
progress, because not every kid is going to meet the standard at the end of the year. Doesn't mean that they're not gonna eventually meet it.
Good.
But
And that's the education that we have to do.
So I guess two or three different things, but the first one that comes to mind of this conversation is just where do you draw the line in the sand of the kid needs to repeat versus automatically, with 10 Ps to be, there's no strict line. It's like a
Retention's really it's a very slippery slope, tricky discussion. And it's very unique to each child.
yeah,
And it's not a practice we like to employ.
yeah.
In addition, so if we think about the 4 scale being exceeding, we've kind of done away with that entirely with just, this is the standard in your meeting. Say a kid gets through half of the school year and they're, whatever, 10 Ms and 2 Ps.
And that's good information for us, right? Because now we're like, we need to push this kid.
But, and also educating the parents, and so the piece that still also is part of the progress report card is like a narrative, comments from the teacher. So like that would be, I know for my staff, that's where I would say, okay, we know this child has met all of this area, like what are you doing to push them? And then what are you telling, what are you sharing with the parents so they're aware of that? Because you're right, it wouldn't show up it would just show up as like, okay, they've met all of these standards. The teacher, now it's gonna rely on the teacher to really share that information and, let the parents know, here's what we're doing now, because
That's actually another change that I didn't mention is the committee full of teachers, mind you, they want to add comment sections under the ELA and under the math, and then an additional comment section at the end. So that they
So
can comment
specific to-
specifically on progress in math and reading specific to the child. So I thought that was pretty awesome.
yeah.
How often are students being evaluated against the end of year standards in January? Is this just like a
It'll have been-
whole distinct thing, or is this?
So it depends. So for instance, with our Bridges math program, some of the skills at the beginning of the year that they're teaching for mastery because it was introduced in the previous grade or developed in the previous grade. And then in October, it might be like in 3rd grade, it might be a 3rd grade standard. But it's like almost the final time they'll see it that year and they're teaching it and they're expecting the kids to have mastered it. So some skills we will want kids to have mastered by then. But if they don't and they're still progressing, that's good information for the teacher that we're not going to come back to this in our written curriculum. So I'm going to have to find a time to reteach this in another way to these kids. But they're assessed pretty frequently. Also on our benchmark assessments, we are testing against end of year standards as well.
I just wanted to kind of, you're hitting on your point about the narrative. I think that's really the critical piece at the elementary level.
Me too.
For me, I don't really feel like the November report card will be missed because frankly, often the narrative on those report cards, in my experience, was thank you for your recent comment.
Yes.
So, and the rest of it really didn't mean a lot. So, I mean, I think having, the parent conference and just having that feedback and dialogue, and then, the 2 report cards is fine. I think January to June is kind of a long stretch, so if there was an opportunity for maybe some informal feedback for parents in like March, that might kind of bridge the gap and be helpful.
Maybe someday a spring conference day too, in March. We actually discussed that extensively as well, because we were thinking that same thing. It's like a 5-month period. So the goal would be for really the report card to come out like the second week of February. So the reporting period would end at the end of January. Like it would align, we were looking at the high school semesters, and it would align very much like that. So the report card would actually come out in February, and then from there, it's like March, April, May, really, that we would be looking for that growth.
Yeah, I think as a parent to elementary students, getting the first update in January is a little scary, but like you said, I think it's really the communication, you know, at those kind of traditional other points, touch points that are there, right? We have the parent teacher conferences and that really making sure that parents show up and
Yes.
teachers are available and ready to discuss student progress.
Any other questions? Yeah, like, oh, one last one. I do like what you guys said. I wish it was actually cut in the presentation. The commentary by arithmetic type, I think is really, really good. Good idea. All right. We want to take a motion to do something?
Is this proposal finalized? You said the committee's meeting at least 2 more times.
Just to create our like
resources
parent
and
resources
support.
and how we're going to make sure that conferences are done in a uniform way and whatnot. But the report cards the drafts are done. Yeah.
Motion to approve the revised elementary progress card.
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you all.
very much for today.
Did we just approve those action plans too, your action plans too?
Oh, did we vote on? No, we didn't. No.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm slacking.
Get on this.
Thanks, Sean. All right, would you like to make a motion there, sir?
I would like to make a motion to approve the action plans for the
District action.
district.
Yeah. Thank you.
Second. All right, all in favor? Aye. There we go. All right. Jay, we thought we totally skipped over you.
No, I thought you sent me an H response.
Oh, you can start.
We thought earlier.
Yeah. That's great. Just like what I remember. All right, so as you know, the state finalized its budget probably the beginning of August. So we need to amend our budget to reflect the increase in chapter 70 money. It's not a lot of money, but it's still a little bit and it helps. I see. You know what? I'll be happy to read them if you need something. We do it like memorize. Mainly, I mean, I wonder if we have to do them all or just the ones that changed.
I think just the ones that changed.
I don't know, I thought we had to do them all, to be honest with you, but anyway, all right, let's go through this all. All right, so the budget, as you certified it in March, was 40,804,542. We're now at 40,945,717. It's 141,000 and change as an increase. Most of that is actually all of it is in chapter 70. So that's the change in the budget as far as the overall amount. State aid, chapter 70 is the big piece that went up. Transportation never changed. Charter school reimbursement actually went down about $5,000. But that's the state aid piece. I'm just going to go quickly if we can. Local aid has not changed at all. You'll see the district aid. I kind of grouped these together. Our district funding, we had to reduce it by $71. The reason for that is they changed the minimum local contributions in the final budget, but they don't change them by the percentage that each town is of the budget. So in order to keep their assessments the same, I had to make an adjustment somewhere. I made it in our funding. The $71, I think will be okay. I think we'll manage. Overall, So the net change in the budget from 24 to 25 now stands at about 877,745. It's important to note that our state aid, even with this increase in chapter 70, is still a reduction from FY 24 to FY 25. It's only $8,600, but it's still, basically we were level funded. That's how we should be looking at that. Now, as far as changes in the budget, as you remember, we reserved about $1.1 million for negotiations, and we level funded all the salaries. We actually came in about $800,000 as far as the actual salary increases when it was all put together. That's good. On the other side, health insurance, what we have found is that just about everybody new coming in has taken a health insurance plan. Some of the people that left that they were replacing didn't have health insurance, so we had to add some money there. Retiree piece went up a little bit more. We had some more retirees, so that piece goes up. And then that deductible piece, as you know, we had zeroed that out. That was part of the negotiations that we said we would set aside to pay for co-insurance. I don't think we're actually going to tap into that much, but we had to reserve it at least for now to see how it progresses for the year.
And you can make an argument that came from the last page. To a degree.
Yeah.
It was part of our holdback.
Right. The other big change is out-of-district tuitions are up about $233,000, and this potentially is going to change again, but we don't know yet. We had a couple of students move in last week that are out-of-district placements at collaborative schools, which means we own the tuition on day one. Where if it's a private school, the sending district owns it because it came after April 1st. We're still working that out. I think one of the students is probably going to be coming to Nipmuc. The other one we're not sure about. There's also 2 or 3 kids that are in evaluations right now. So there's some potential there. We don't have a lot of wiggle room in that area, but we will manage it as best we can. And once we know more about where that's headed, we don't have answers on that yet. So basically, we saved a little bit on salaries from what we originally proposed, but we spent it on health insurance and out-of-district tuition to the tune that it adds up to the $141,000. And that's about how it all balanced out. Now, when you look at all the line items, there's been lots of changes from March to now, things that went up and down. We found out that something cost a little bit more, something cost a little bit less. An example is when I look at the electric bills in March, it's hard to project where we're going to be at the end of the year when I see them in July and August. Now, I see that we can actually cut a little bit in this account because we didn't spend it. So there's been lots of play with that probably happened every day between March and now. But overall, I think it's a good solid budget. It's a minor increase. I think in your package, you had the year-to-date expenditures for July and August. We'll try to do those monthly. I guess, is there any questions? Pretty cut and dry. And then we got about $140,000. We're putting it in the budget. We need to amend it to reflect that. And other than that, you've got motions, and on that motion page, I put next to each line what the change was, so you can kind of see it. So when you look at, say, Mendon, you see that their contribution went up $408, so their discretionary charges went down $408 to keep it the same.
All right. Any questions? Anyone else? On to the motions. All right, I think we should break it up this year and we'll just go down the road. So Matt, you want to take motion number 1?
Start on that end.
Yeah, the first one's the easiest one.
Yeah, seriously, it's shorter than that.
Okay. I move to set the operational budget for the Mendon-Upton Regional School District for the 24-25 fiscal year at $40,945,717. That consists of general office operations within the budget.
I move to assess the town of Mendon, $11 million, $46,827. It consists of the following. Minimum local contribution, $8,740,788. Non-discretionary charges, transportation and fixed assets, $911,554. Discretionary charges, operational additional, $1,394,486.
Okay, and I move to assess the town of Upton $14,078,506 that consists of the following: minimum local contribution of $11,051,358, non-discretionary charges, transportation and fixed assets of $1,196,573, and discretionary charges, operational additional of $1,830,575. You should.
All right. Make a motion to appropriate $14,540,455 from state aid that consists of all. Chapter 70 funds, $12,900,063, 694. Regional transportation reimbursement of $1,533,974. Charter school reimbursement of $42,767.87.
I'd like to make a motion to appropriate $1,279,929 from the following school district sources. Number one, Upton Shared Technology, $35,000. Number two, transfer in from revolving accounts of $150,000. Number three, Medicaid reimbursement for $84,928. Number four, E&D appropriation for $1 million even. And number five, interest of $10,000.
I make a motion to appropriate $2,351,103 from the following revolving accounts. Number one, school choice, $1 million. Number two, circuit breaker, $1,351,100.
And we so move.
All right, you have to second it?
Second.
All in favor? All right, all 6 motions have been approved.
That was the weirdest process we've ever seen.
I believe the chair recommended it, so you know who to blame. Now, I need to send a letter out to both towns tomorrow or Wednesday, sometime within 7 days, notifying them that we've made this change in our budget. If they don't do anything, which they're not required to do, it becomes our budget after 45 days. If they decided they wanted to vote on it, they would have to call a town meeting, but since their assessments don't change, I don't see why they would bother. They haven't ever in the past.
Right.
I don't think either town has a town meeting coming up in 45 days, but this doesn't change their assessments at all, which is the goal. And I'll send that out by the end of the week for sure. I'll get it done tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jay, appreciate it. All right, I think that's everything on the agenda. So school committee subcommittees. So we've got the budget committee meeting on October 9th. There's a link to the budget development calendar, which I think is built on from last year. Policy subcommittee is meeting on September 23rd. Superintendent evaluation subcommittee is meeting on October 15th. We've got a capital planning ad hoc committee on September 11th with the Upton Select Board, and then again as a group on October 23rd. That's all the subcommittees.
September 11th is Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, that's tomorrow?
2
days.
2 days.
2 days.
And we posted today just that if members of the capital subcommittee want to attend that workshop.
Oh.
MUCP is going to be presenting at Upton Select Board, and we were invited to attend, so I posted for capital.
Okay.
If anyone, Jane and I will be there, but anybody else wants to attend.
Okay.
And that's October 11th? Yeah. Okay.
No,
September.
September 11th, sorry.
It's Wednesday, like 2 days.
At 7. It's at 7. I'll write that.
I will try my best to attend. Do you know Jim or Matt, if you guys will be there?
Planning on it.
Okay, great.
I will try as well.
Okay, perfect.
Parent teacher to PTO.
There
Part commitment.
you go. All right, I don't have any other matters that weren't anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posted meeting. Got lots of future agenda items, including the Massachusetts History Teacher of the Year recognition. Discuss those lunch rates, and we'll close out fiscal year 24. If there's nothing else, we can take a motion to adjourn at 8:45.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned at